problem actually in a year, where I maybe my PowerPoint is too big and full of information, or whatever the problem is, that PowerPoint suddenly decides it cannot read it. And so I've rebuilt it, but that meant I didn't get a lot of time to, where I maybe my PowerPoint is too big and full of information, or whatever the problem is, that PowerPoint suddenly decides it cannot read it. And so I've rebuilt it, but that meant I didn't get a lot of time to, where I maybe my PowerPoint is too big and full of information, or whatever the problem is, that PowerPoint suddenly decides it cannot read it. And you haven't lost me. I'm here. But I don't know what to do about the echo. Where maybe my PowerPoint is too big and full of information. It's on loop, isn't it? A very strange loop. PowerPoint suddenly. I'm going to hang up from Ravella and stay on Zoom. You haven't lost me. I'm here. I'm going to stay here on Zoom, you guys, because I'm finding a lot of feedback from Ravella to me. I'm getting a loop feed. So can I just present here in Zoom, and I'll come back to Ravella later? Is that all right, you guys? Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can.
I keep getting kicked off, but shall I go ahead and start off the session?
Yeah. Yeah, let's start. Let's start.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Well,
thank you. Sorry about this.
Everyone, and I just want to start out by saying what an honor it is for me to introduce today's speaker, because the work she does speaks to a lot of things that are important to me. Nonny de la Peña is a true trailblazer. She's showed the way to create meaningful experiences for XR that give it relevance in the real world. She's credited with inventing the genre of immersive journalism. She brings real social issues into XR by combining a journalist's sense of integrity, creativity, and technological invention. Her piece, Hunger in Los Angeles, to give you a sense of what some of her work is about, if you're not familiar with it, was the first VR experience to ever be shown at the Sundance Festival back in 2012. She won many awards. She was one of CNET's 20 most influential. She was the Wall Street Journal magazine Technology Innovative Award. Her work's been shown around the world at the Film Festival. Her company, Emblematic Group, has built a critically acclaimed body of work. And it includes things such as tracking the chaos of the Syrian civil war. And they're also working with AT&T on projects that leverage the future of 5G technologies and machine learning. So she's right on the cutting edge technologically. But today she's going to talk to us about her talk is called Building the Volumetric Future. And she'll be introducing Emblematic's latest project, the web VR platform REACH, which creates
I'm not hearing anything. Can you guys hear me though, right?
The audio died. Yeah, the audio just died. All of a sudden, everyone's complaining about the. This is not.
Okay, I got kicked out of the world again. Sorry about that.
Ah, there we go.
Mark?
Yep. Do we want to share the YouTube stream? Oops. Okay, no, Nonny, I think people are just joining on YouTube now, so you should be able to just go ahead and present.
Okay. Should I just take over on the Zoom link and just get started?
Yeah. All right, let's get some more claps, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm just gonna present my screen and hopefully I'm talking. People just send me something in the chat that I know that things are actually going through, and I will share screen now and just chat to me. Oh no, I need to be able to. The host has to let me do my screen share. So as soon as you grant me permission, I can screen share. Hello. Hi, I just trying to get permission to share my screen so that I can screen share. I don't have permission to share my screen so I can do my presentation.
This is awesome. I love it. Helping each other out with your, is what button is what? Yeah.
I'm just trying to get permission to share my screen so that I can screen share. I don't have permission to share my screen so I can do my presentation.
Telling us the chat that's going on.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, just hopefully you'll let me know if anything goes wrong here, but I think we can just go on. Here we go, sorry.
The real VR pioneer, Nonny de la Peña.
What if I could present you a story that you remember with your entire body and not just with your mind? So what'd you think? Oh, you're crying. With VR, virtual reality, I can put you on scene in the middle of the story. You get this whole body sensation.
There's a bunch of cops here. They're like standing around, something's going on.
Oh, right here. That's not cool.
On the other side of a fence, there's all these people just like kicking and beating.
We can have what I call this duality of presence, a real feeling as if you're in the middle of something that you normally see on TV news.
So I started applying all these ideas to what I named immersive journalism. And we all know being there is the most important part of understanding almost anything that's happening. Along in a partnership with America's premier investigative documentary series, Frontline, who had incredible access on solitary confinement cells. What that is photogrammetry. And it's exact photographs of a cell. You are walking around the exact cell, the exact footprint. You are in the room. This works so well for putting people on scene at real stories. So then what? You got to put the people in there. How do you do that? I can now put you in the room with somebody who is videotaped in volume. You can literally walk around them in a volumetric way.
Emblematic is among the world's leading producers of virtual and augmented reality, with more than 10 years of experience. We create innovative, high-impact, immersive media, ranging from emotionally powerful stories for media companies, brands, and global culture, to OTT solutions for world-class partners in business-to-business virtual reality distribution. Let your audience experience your message in a deeply powerful and intimate experience. Don't just tell your story, live it.
Hi guys, I want to make sure. Are you hearing my presentation? Is what I need to know. I'd like to go on to the next screen. Why does volumetric work? Why does that work? Powerful. Why does immersive work? This is a group of course that's done a lot of studies, but I'm going to reflect it back on some of my personal thinking. We did a little about something we did with something with what we called tele-immersive journalism, right? Play this for you. So I don't know why it's been playing now either. I've been having a little trouble today too. Great. Well, I'm glad I'm on the stream. But this was me. I was dressed up as a robot. Haha. I was actually embodying that robot. I was wearing a motion capture suit in Los Angeles. The robot was in Barcelona. And I actually was doing some interviewing of a researcher while I was inside that robot. I was like doing my job as a journalist, but from thousands of miles away, occupying the body of a robot. And I have to say, it was a pretty extraordinary experience of feeling like I was in the body of that robot in a way that just, where's my cursor and why isn't it letting me go forward? Shoot. Even I'm having trouble today. What is with the technology today? It's really off, maybe too many people on the internet. Okay, so what I started to call about this sort of thing, the sense of being in these two places, this feeling of like, how do you take people through different stories and this full volumetric embodied experience, was something that we really translated early on into a series of terms. And one of them was the term embodied edit. So what was an embodied edit? For us, we started out, one of the very first projects was in a piece about Guantanamo Bay prison. And we had to take the individual in Second Life from one place and teleport them to another, which is obviously something you're doing in Verbella. This came out of a project I did where I made a documentary in 2003 called Unconstitutional. And with a grant from the MacArthur Foundation, the Bay Area Video Coalition, we translated the existing significant project into a digital form. And we built a virtual, accessible version of Gitmo in contrast to the real but inaccessible prison camp. It was originally built in Second Life, and then I rebuilt it in Unity for the Moscow Museum of Modern Art. This should have been, what happened when I decided to go into a classroom at USC and learn C#. At least, it could have been more diverse for sure, but at least, this looks gendered. But no, this is what I walked into. I actually snapped some pictures from my phone because it was so sort of shocking to walk into this packed room of guys and be the only woman. But I did learn a lot from Berg Zerg Arcade, which was a guy on YouTube who was teaching C# coding in relationship to Unity. And then David Hegelson actually gave me my first professional version. So my museum piece didn't have to say student version all over it. And I have to say that was huge, like, right? Getting a somebody to support you in that way at a time when I was making this with no money was really helpful in moving things forward. So what did the piece look like? Well, this was on the left with an image that was struggled out by Army soldiers who showed how people were being brought to Gitmo. And on the right is what we did to your avatar. Basically, we had a heads up display and it let us take control of the body of your avatar and put you into this position. And then we could take you on to, sorry, before I get into that, it would then go from here and it would take you to one of the cages that I was showing up here. As I said to you guys, I lost my PowerPoint just minutes ago, so I've had to rebuild. So forgive me if it's a little bit, occasionally I have to go back. But you went from that airplane and then you would be teleported. And when the, literally there was like a black, let me go back to the embodied edit page here. So you came into on the left, you'll see is the way that, you know, the avatar was put. And then all of a sudden this quote unquote black hood would drop over the vision of the entire screen. And when it came up, you would be on the right. So we would literally take you in a editorial way along the storyline, but with an embodied edit through your avatar. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about another study we did that was very interesting on, you know, connecting to your digital presence. This was early in Second Life, and I was interested about sexual harassment in Second Life. And we just put up a survey, a Qualtrics survey, and we got incredible responses about it. You know, virtually raped repeatedly and chased. It was shocked me, made me extremely upset. You know, there was a giant penis attached to my head. But here's the interesting thing. We were looking at how did women feel about harassment in Second Life, and we looked at like offline world data and text-based systems of, you know, commentary, et cetera, where women usually felt more harassed than men did. I think we'll see that on Twitter as well, or other kind of bulletin board-like systems. And we wanted to know whether that was true in Second Life. And indeed, we found that women reported situations seeming more harassing than men did. But we then found ourselves some data that we didn't expect, which was that we asked about the gender rather than the sex of individuals, so people could pick what their gender, real world gender was. And it was interesting that when men reported, really? I really apologize. I seem to be missing a slide here. But when men were asked how they felt, because we actually had a little bit of this data, wasn't what I started out doing. When men reported how they felt when they played as women, when they took on an avatar of a female, and when they reported how they felt being sexually harassed, they were actually more upset than the women were. Now, we didn't find out why, because that wasn't the original part of the study, but it was very interesting that men who said, you know, individuals who said their gender were male, but who played as female, found situations more harassing than women did. And that is kind of interesting in terms of our connection to our bodies. So, you know, why does that digital representation of yourself make you feel harassed and upset in the same way that the physical world does? And it's because that digital sense of presence is quite powerful. We're hardwired to adopt representations of ourselves as real. Some of you may be familiar with this study in which researchers from Duke were trying to help people who are paraplegics use human computer interfaces in order to drive equipment that might help them walk, much like I was trying to drive that robot, but this time just with, you know, paraplegics with their mind. But they put them in a headset, and after a year of being in the headset, they actually had some synapses return in their brains that let them control their body, which was really extraordinary. It wasn't like they got up and walked, but they could control their bowel movements, which is a significant quality of life issue. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I call spatial narratives. You know, a spatial narrative is like a story that actually happens through space. This is a little bit about that piece, Hunger in LA, which was one of the first pieces I ever did. I was working at USC, and the students were making a very traditional news, now would be considered traditional news website about hunger. And I wanted to do a VR piece, but I ended up getting a high school student because those students were not all that keen to come into VR at that time. It's still very early. We didn't have GoPro cameras. And with this young graduating high school student, we started recording audio at food banks until she recorded this extraordinary day where a man with diabetes waiting in this long line didn't get food in time, and he collapsed. His blood sugar dropped too low, and he collapsed into a diabetic coma. There's too many people. There's too many people. Okay. Somebody
Okay, he's having a seizure. Okay.
Somebody
Need help.
So you can see for the guy on the right, which is actually the famous director Alejandro González Iñárritu, who's experiencing a VR experience like this for the first time. He's actually careful to not step on the body. He's walking around the body despite this huge cable and despite the equipment on his head and that he can see, but he's actually very engaged with that body. He's engaged with walking around inside the story. That was one that got into the Sundance Film Festival in 2012 as the first VR piece. And I think began to, it started a lot of careers and began to help people understand that they could use VR in a spatial way to tell story. Now I'm going to talk about embodied digital rhetoric, what I call embodied digital rhetoric. Rhetoric, of course, is a persuasive argument. Digital rhetoric would be using digital tools. But what about when you're embodied, when you're in the space? And how can that be different? So I want to talk to you a little bit about a piece we did with PBS Frontline and PBS Nova that try to deal with climate change. What we did is we took this 360 camera and clamped it and then we built a replica of that helicopter, and we put the audio around the helicopter so you could be inside and actually feel like you're flying over Greenland. Never mind, there's no pilot. That was one of those interesting ethical journalistic questions, that if we put a pilot there, then you'd think the pilot was there when you were flying over there. It's really complicated as we get to what's ethical and what's not. But there's a preview of the
Well, when you look at the glacier like that, from the vantage point of an helicopter, it looks like it's going to be here forever. How could it possibly go away?
The glacier retreated more in the last 15 years than in the previous 70 years. We'd like to know why.
Drop.
It's really important. It's a thermometer being dropped. Okay, so making these kind of things so that they can be embodied. Unfortunately, sometimes we got material back like this, and then we would have to actually work in ZBrush to reproduce it as something that people could stand and walk through in order to make a fully digital version of this, an embodied version. And put the scientist who was captured as a videogrammetry. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, and talked about how videogrammetry is made. But the thing that you need to know about this is that we did all these studies on it afterwards to indicate, how do people find being inside a volumetric piece. And what we did is we showed a flat video, a 360 video, and a full walk around experience to viewers to see how they felt. And it was amazing how being able to be embodied on scene with a glacier melting around you, and the fact that you could be next to a guy in a plane dropping a thermometer to the ocean, right? To feel like, oh, I could drop a thermometer to measure the ocean temperature. Basically what we found was that it demystified the science, and people really understood climate change in a way that they indicated that the flat video and the 360 video did not allow, that they really understood something that is, you can't watch a video of a glacier melting and really understand it, but when you're right next to it, it really changes the whole thing. So All right, I'm going to talk to you now about something when I call duality of presence. What's duality of presence? It's that feeling of being here and there at the same time. And I think this medium is very interesting for evoking that sense of both, right? Just like a word on, the headsets that we used in Hunger in LA, and why we can start talking about, presence is, we had to make headsets for Hunger in LA, because I really wanted us to walk around and be on scene on that street, right? Because I felt it was really important for the sensation of that experience. And we couldn't take, we had only the $50,000 fake space. And when it got into Sundance, we were basically told you couldn't leave the lab. And just want to shout out to that guy in the green sweater. That's Tai Fan, one of the, I think, the greatest unsung heroes in this. And that's Palmer Luckey with his face down in a mask, with his fat head and my skinny head. And we're trying to figure out how those IPD with the little dots in the middle where your eyeballs are, where they should be in order to make a good headset. I'm sad that well, about Palmer's white supremacist associations now, but at the time he was just a kid. And I believed he would grow out of some of that. Anyway, we showed up with a headset like this, with Palmer crushed in the hotel room, my hotel room, and driving the truck around for us. Video.
So what'd you think? Oh, you're crying.
But that sense of crying and emotional and being there, and again, even though you've got that big old clunky headset on, you can see out the sides. People are down on the ground trying to touch the seizure victim, talk to the seizure victim, and this happens over and over again. And I think if you make stuff in this medium, you understand at this point that you can be two places at once. If any of you have got a Quest and you're able to play the Vader Immortal, I know I'm in my living room at home, but oh my God, is it fun to train like a Jedi. The way that VR is taking us into these experiences now, duality of presence is going to become a very normal type of thing. But I can tell you, I had report after report after report from people going, oh my God, I felt like I was there, but I knew I was here too. Really interesting early work on this. Now I want to address space and place. Space, really, if you think, it's sort of this interesting arguments that go back and forth with space and place, and I'm not going to get into this too deeply on an academic level. For those of you out there, happy to have a discussion later on. But really, to me, a space becomes a place when it has meaning. And because VR can take you to a place, it really has a really interesting effect on what space is. So I'm going to highlight a piece that we did on solitary confinement. Again, this is with a piece done with VR Frontline, PBS Frontline, where we put you inside the solitary confinement cell, and you experience what it's like to be inside that place in a way that very few other kinds of media afford. I talked about that in the opening about photogrammetry, so you know how this was made. We had somebody who was, some of you might know the Reality.io folks. If you do know Reality.io, they made this, but they were locked in this room for 3 hours, having to take photographs of every inch. And by the way, it was actually, maximum security prison. So we got him in, and because the warden really wanted to change solitary and reduce solitary, he felt the piece was important too to address this to the rest of the world. But basically, this our creator had to be locked inside maximum prison solitary cell for 3 hours to take this. And I can tell you, when you're in it for 15 minutes, it's super disturbing. For him, it was really difficult. But just a little bit more on videogrammetry. If you're not familiar with videogrammetry, we then were able to take Kenny, who spent 4.5 years in solitary, and really has had a mental breakdown since, just really had a rough time. And this is an 8i, unfortunately, a company that's now gone out of business. but was one of the first to show how you could do video from every angle, so that you could put people on scene. And here's a trailer from that project.
When I walked into my cell, I didn't realize that I would be spending 5.5 years of my life in solitary confinement. I look fine, but I'm not. 18 years old, I was new to the system, never really been in trouble before. As an adult, the solitary confinement and the sensory deprivation, years of it drove a relatively sane young man insane. Cut myself thousands of times, just over and over and over and over. I acted out, I assaulted staff, I committed arson, and I did a lot of bad things. But that's what solitary confinement does to you. It breaks you down and it turns you into an animal.
So that's an idea of like what space and place, and that space and place are, I really wish my thing hadn't gotten corrupted. We're all having tech difficulties today. It's weird, something's in the ether. But anyway, the point is that like when you're in that place of solitary confinement with that person, that space is transformed. This big, I'm gonna go back to the term space and place. Yeah, here we go. There's that big guy in the cell with you, and you're in this space, and suddenly the space itself, the story of the space, of it being solitary, of this man in there having himself cut, to me, that's when a space becomes transformed into a place. And I think that's how we're gonna be thinking more and more about how we do storytelling in the future. Oh, sorry, now I can get into embodiment and behavioral realism, which is really my anti-uncanny valley argument. If you take a look at that character on the left, she couldn't be more freaky looking, right? What her face looks like and how terrible she looks. She is terrifying. But by the way, I really wanted to make a picture of the real girl. And let me just show you a quick trailer of why she was designed for a story about what was happening to children and Syrian refugee kids. Like the way that the Trump administration has put children in cages in order to get at their parents to try to supposedly prevent them from immigrating here. Syrian President Assad was also going after children in order to affect their parents. Children were apparently targeted. And so I really wanted to address this issue of what was happening to kids in the Syrian refugee problem. And so I made a piece about this with no budget again. So, you know, we tried very hard to document the actual event, and it's a day on a street, right? And this digital characters, they're terrible, right? And yet it went to the World Economic Forum, and then it went to the Victoria and Albert Museum, where we were in the big tapestries room, but we weren't. Nobody was notified. It wasn't advertised. It was just a notice out there. But at the end of it, we had 64 pages of guest book comments. Like, here was this ugly, horrible model who couldn't be more scary and more uncanny valley, and yet the behavioral realism was more important. As long as things didn't clip, as long as the sound was right, as long as the car wheels were turning, as long as certain sense of realism was there, it didn't matter that her face was so terrible in my reproduction of this singing girl. The results were incredible, absolutely fascinating, completely immersed, quite frightening, believable. And then from a Syrian who said, this was a very difficult piece to experience. As a Syrian, his family is still living in alms. Although I felt that the piece was inappropriate at first, I've certainly changed my mind after experiencing it firsthand. It's important for the world to bear witness to the situation in Syria, and this is a powerful and effective way to do that. Thank you for growing this technology. So given time constraints and all the tech problems that we've been having, I was going to get into some other pieces we've been working on more recently on the Japanese American National Museum project that takes you to a concentration camp. A really interesting piece we've been working on Lyme disease. If I get a minute, I'll pull those footage back up. But first, I'm going to go into a live demo of REACH. I know that we're going to be doing some workshops around that, but let me just quickly show you guys. Hopefully this is all going to work out because it has been very difficult today, hasn't it? So risky in this bad tech day to go live. And if I end up in trouble, I will show a video, but let's see if this works. I hope I've asked the organizers to text me, keep me informed that everything's working. If there's a problem, please let me know. I'm going to create a new project here. And if you can see, there may be some sort of lag, but there's no lag on my end. So when you come in to play with this, you'll see for yourself there's no lag. It's a series of buttons. I would call us like an alpha plus, beta minus. I've built this bootstrapped, investment in women. It's very, very, very minimal. So even though I've had a vision for this for some time, it's been a little tough to make without funding. But I'm going to show you a photogrammetry environment in here. And this is actually from an actual location, but it is not shared because this is an extraordinary place and it's protected. It's a little bit dark, so I'm just going to go in and change my lighting. You can pick different lighting you want, but I'm going to use my light 2, which is automatically directional. So let me light it up a little bit more, and you can see that actually it's got real-time lighting, but you're not using C# coding. You're not having to do all the crazy stuff I had to do in order to achieve this. You can change your skyboxes out very quickly. Here's a night sky that's in here, but you can toss that away and go to the real sky. You can put in 360 video if you want to, or you can do this panorama. Obviously, my lighting is off right now, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to show you how to put an object in. I'm going to put in an animated object for the fun of it. I'm using Binder, who I'm going to have to scale way down. By the way, pretty much all of my objects in here are free ones that I got from Sketchfab. We should be able, very shortly, we're going to be you'll be able to add new objects directly, but I'll show you how to grab an object from Sketchfab in the short term. But let me position him in. And I'm going to change my lighting so I like it a little better on him. But we've got to make sure it's a directional light because we want to be pointing at him, right? So let's make that a little bit brighter on him. If I just drag it back, there we go. Maybe even a little brighter. Okay, and if I go back to my object, I can hit a play and you can see it's animated, right? If I want to add a new object, you just download from a place like Sketchfab. Make sure you download a GLTF file, GLTF, and then don't unzip it. You just add a new object and you just drag a new the whole zip file in here. Literally just take it and drop in the zip file and you'll be able to add any new object that's a GLTF from Sketchfab. Sometimes the textures don't come in right, but that's because we're all figuring out the unified format of this new medium that we're all going to play in. So there's text, audio, and if you want to add characters, there's 3 ways you can add character. You can add a flat video card, but we have it in a billboarding. So it'll kind of follow you around. Let me just now a little better. And show you how we have a chroma key picker. So you can shoot in different color backgrounds. If you've got a different color, you can just get rid of that. And I'm going to preview the loop for turn off the audio. And you can see that that's a loop thing. You can add in a depth kit character. You can also add in you know, we have one character who got working on it. Said, well, it's a little bit glitchy right now. It was smoother before. But we just, you know, we're bootstraps or some things are problematic. But I'm adding in a full volumetric character. You'll see it. You'll see there's a little bit of a glitch on him, but this is something which we will no doubt be doing all the time, which is putting volumetric characters straight in the browser. And let me just move them over again, select them here, and we can play. And as you can see, it's volumetric. She's not, she's flat, but she does follow around with you, so it feels not bad, right? And now I'm gonna just make sure my camera's in the starting place. And we're gonna do a better tutorial, a longer tutorial for you guys, but I wanted to at least get you started thinking about Reach as something if you wanna use it. Here's my preview button just to see where it's starting. Okay, now I can publish it. And guys, I restarted my computer because of problems I had with my presentation. I really lost a lot of new stuff for you guys minutes before, and I'd love to know what that was all about. But in the meantime, I'm going to very quickly show you what you can do with that. Let's go to this. And I'm going to take that URL and I'm going to embed it right here. And I'm going to cut and paste it to here. And then I'm going to copy that URL. Hopefully this is all going to work, but let's give it a shot. Let's see. Okay. I'm not a great HTML editor, but let's see if I pull that off. I think I did. And there is our piece that we just made embedded in the browser. And, you know, hit start.
REACH is the first web platform for creating and sharing volumetric VR using real people and places. Have you ever wanted to create something in virtual reality, but you were...
Anyway, so you get a sense that it's volumetric. If you have a headset, you can put the headset button and now you can walk around, right? So, all right, I'm going to go back to my, sorry, I'm getting rid of all that, getting back to my PowerPoint. And just for those of you who don't know enough about photogrammetry, it's a little quick bit about this. You can see on the left, it's click, 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 click. And then the algorithm will automatically spit out the volumetric object. It still needs cleanup. I think it's going to be a really interesting job skill in the future. Oh, and just saying that I use that for a bipartisan committee looking into establishing a women's history museum on the mall. And I did it on the piece was kind of a part of a report going in looking for money. And I decided to focus on a woman editor and a revolutionary era printer. And she actually, the guys, this is the first official Declaration of Independence where the men signed their names because it was treason to have your name on it. And she actually printed that. At the very bottom, it says printed by Mary Catherine Goddard. It's kind of amazing because she'd never printed her name before, and that would be treason. So she committed treason by doing this. But she was super badass. When she died, she freed her slave and she left her all of her money. I wish I could track the slave, I really do. But anyway, just to give you an idea, we had no budget as usual. And so, I needed that printing press room. And I couldn't afford to build it. And we found one that was already in existence. And we did photogrammetry of it so that I could place the characters that, we made a little script. I made a little script.
Careful, ink is not scarce here.
Using her writing.
Your bold words in the Maryland Journal.
Anyway, just a little bit last things on kind of this type of volumetric training we'll have. This was a piece that we did, very prototype. I wish I had an opportunity to make it more fleshed out, but it was to train police how to de-escalate. And it not only had these things you could choose text-wise, but the character would react if you had your hand on your shoulder or your hand on your gun, the timbre of your voice, if you're yelling, if you're quieter, et cetera, which are known techniques to help de-escalate.
It's a very, very strong spiritual connection between me and music. I went down to the St. James Infirmary.
Just showing you how volumetric is getting better and better for character capture. That was done on Metastage. And in this one, I was doing a piece with AT&T with Metastage. This was a woman who was a Olympic fencer, and she fought this guy when she was 10, and when they went to college, they would compete against each other, and now they're engaged to get married. And I think I'm right in saying this is probably the first volumetric kiss ever captured. But I think that this is the thing. Our stories are going to be told not flat, but volumetrically. So a quick ethics and conclusion before we get out. You know, how are we going to do with the fake news, right? Obviously, if we're capturing fake characters, what are they going to do? We know about humans being manipulated, but this is something, you know, we've been considering for a while. This was the image of Hillary Clinton in the war room when Osama bin Laden was assassinated. And you can see there's a woman behind her as well in the back there. But a number of newspapers in the Middle East photoshopped her out because they didn't want to have women and men in the same room together. I laugh about this one. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. This is definitely true, but Mark Twain never said that. That's a lie. But why it's true is because there's been a number of studies to show that lies spread faster than truth. And we know we've got such an issue with trolling and disinformation. And this is something, as we make stuff, especially researchers and educators, we really always have to have this in the back of our mind. We know that hate groups have reached a record high, and trust in major American institutions has fallen to troubling lows. But without trust, democracy can't function. I like to end on these notes of I don't believe we're meant to be this way. Kindness can prevail. And a really interesting study that kindness actually helps cure. That if a placebo is given with kindness and caring and touch, that it actually is more healing than if you give a placebo with nothing. So I'm going to finish with the value, the flip side of how volumetric material can be significant in the way that it can change things in the positive sense as well. This is Kitty Genovese. She was murdered, and the New York Times said that 37 people saw it and didn't call the police, and it became a whole accepted theory of the bystander effect. Well, Mel Slater and Maria Santavives, this has actually kicked off my entire career with seeing this piece really for volumetric. I mean, I'd already about Gitmo, but this was the piece that made me realize I had to keep working volumetrically. So the guy in the white, he's drunk, and the guy on the left has the wrong jersey on, and they get into this fight, and it's all based on actual video that was captured at closing time at the pubs in England, showing that actually the more that these incidents happen, the more likely a bystander was to get involved. And in this case, you can't put people at a violent scene, but they're measuring the way that people felt about these situations. And they indeed found that the bystander effect was erroneous. And after this piece was made, the New York Times came out and said that the portrayal was erroneous and it was grossly exaggerated. And I just want to say it's super interesting that we can take something that was, accepted, has been accepted for decades as truth, can be exploded using virtual reality and what might be considered a digital fake. Okay, I'm going to stop there and take questions. Thank you. I guess if you could text questions into the chat, I can answer them. Thank you. Sorry. Oh. Are we still there? Can anybody text chat to me? I mean, I have a lot more I can share or show, but I'm not sure now where you guys are, or you can also text me questions, or you can put it into the Zoom chat if necessary. All right, guys, I guess I'm going to leave this Zoom since I'm not sure with all the technical difficulties, even if you're still out there. But I hope it wasn't too difficult to participate in this. But thank you very much. I appreciate anybody who came. Hello? Do I have folks out there? Okay, I'm just going to say thank you very much for having me. I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties for anybody and everybody, including a long, much more in-depth and interesting presentation I'd worked on, but I'll have to retrieve it and maybe next time. Thank you. I wish I knew where the chat was to join you guys. But thank you so much for your time, and I hope it was interesting.